So when we talk about media and its role, particularly its role in Black folks, we have to think about, as folks have mentioned here, what is the purpose of media? Whether or not that's media that's corporate owned or media that's independent, right? What is the narrative that media is giving you? Our media at Black Power Media is giving you this narrative that the United States government has been, is now, and forever will be an enemy of Black people in the United States and African people on the continent. There is no ifs, ands, or buts about it. That is the role of the United States vis-a-vis Black folks, vis-a-vis poor folks. And that is the narrative that we have to make sure that we are clear that we are giving you. That the United States will never come free us because it is only here to enslave us. The role of mainstream or corporate media, mainstream is a term, an unfortunate term we should not be using. The role of corporate media is as what our fellow panelists have already stated. But I want to give you some particulars about what it is that we are saying to you about what corporate media does when it talks to us. The corporate media we all consume, right? The corporate media that we are enwashed of, right? We bathe in it, we swim in it. We cannot get away from it. It shapes our views from infancy until our death. And we wind up parroting these views without even knowing it, without investigation, as folks say, without study. Even those of us like myself who claim to be, I've kicked the crack habit of corporate media. Every now and then, I got to stop myself from saying, I think they're saying that those folks must be bad. It's like, no. I got to go read something more. I can't rely on CNN. So quickly, this is the role of corporate media in our lives. One, violence is not violence when it is practiced by the West. Nothing the West ever does is termed as violent. It could drop bombs on people in Japan, as it has, right? No other nation has ever used nuclear weapons, but yet it's never called violence. It could kill 6 million people in the country of Vietnam, but it's never called an invasion, an overthrow. It can attack Iraq, Iran, Afghanistan. It can put bases all around the world, but it's never done for violence. But if you pick up a stick, a rock, if you push, if you shove, you are committing violence against the West and or its institutions. And that goes for the same thing here at home. When the police kill Black people, even in the most horrific ways, it's played down. There's a rationale for it. We investigate the past of the person who was killed. If you go to a precinct as a Black person and march and rally, you have to state that you're there for peaceful purposes. You have to align with the ideology that's given to you. How dare you even think about your right to self-determination and self-defense? You're not allowed that. That's what's taught to you by the corporate media. Two, capitalism is good. Capitalism is always good. Capitalism, the ownership of resources, the means of production by private corporations is innately good, and you cannot question it. Because if you question it, you are, of course, a communist or a socialist. And there's nothing wrong with being those things. But it's been so demonized here that you could never even get out another word. If you question the fact that the making of an economy is controlled by small individuals in organizations that are non-democratic, who have total power to hire, fire people, to destroy lives, then you are a communist. You can never question capitalism. On its face, it's good for humanity according to corporate media. How many countries are under the capitalist system? How has it been good for those countries? What is the state of Africa as a predominantly a predominantly capitalist continent? What is the state of Asia? The state of South America? What is the state of Europe? And what is the state of the United States under capitalism? There are few who are rich and many who are poor, but do not question it, because capitalism is good according to Western media. The United States and the West, they make mistakes, but they're never doing it with an evil intent. There's never any wrongdoing. You must understand that. So when the United States drops drones on weddings and gatherings, it's only mistake. It's not meant to terrorize the larger public at bay, at May. When the United States develops programs that murder and kill activists and organizers and labor unions, when they train military officers of other countries to do the same in their country, there's only mistakes made. It's never a purposeful strategy. And of course, those mistakes are only mistakes when they come to the public eye, because they're never going to be admitted unless someone takes a picture, has a video, somehow is able to testify. But you have to remember, the United States and the West is never committing terrorism. It's never terrorizing. It only makes mistakes. And so when it kills thousands of people, if not millions of people, through sanctions, those are only unfortunate incidents to a larger, greater good, which you may not understand. But if you watch corporate media, and if that's where you get your daily dose of understanding, then that, of course, is what you will know. The United States and Western Europe is a rule-based system, which means it's their rules, and their rules are the fair rules. They are objective. You cannot question the objectivity of it. So when folks here talked earlier about the Marshall Plan, and they looked upon the Marshall Plan as something that potentially could be used for Africa, or we discussed it in such a way. Well, that's not what the Marshall Plan was, even in Europe. The Marshall Plan was a way to reestablish European economies so that the United States would have someone to trade with, including Germany and Japan, who they just recently destroyed. How was it going to do that? By taking out loans from the United States, as mentioned, but also by recolonizing, post-World War II, all of the colonies that the Axis powers were no longer in control of. So the reason you had a Vietnam War, the reason you had colonialization continue on the continent to the extent that it did, was because the Marshall Plan was, how do we reestablish the dominance of European capitalism over the world? That's what the Marshall Plan was. But what you're taught in school is that the Marshall Plan saved Europe and saved the world. Lastly, as Jackie mentioned, the Western media is here to tell us who our friends are and who our enemies are. So one day, Ethiopia was a friend of the United States, and then it wasn't. Iraq was a friend of the United States, and then it wasn't, and then it was again. Iran was a friend of the United States, and then it wasn't. So your enemies and friends, Russia was for a brief time also a friend of the United States post the Soviet Union, and then it wasn't again. So we have to understand that the moment the US system of media operations tells you and I that someone is our enemy, you need to do all you can to investigate about what's going right in that country. What is it that you need to do to duplicate the efforts that have made these people the enemies of the United States and of Western Europe? Because that means that these people are really fighting for freedom, that they're really trying to liberate. And it may not always be on the terms in which you and I appreciate, but it does mean it's worthy of further investigation. So I'll wrap up quickly with, I just wanted to name again some of the things in terms of a media narrative that we have to understand what happens both here and in Africa. And I think these things have been mentioned. I wrote them down based on what folks have said today, and I'm going to run through it really quickly. This is the media narrative from the West to us about Africa. That is full of dictators, that is underdeveloped, that is full of bribery, that is primitive, that is corrupt, that is war-torn, that is uncivilized, that is food insecure. Here's the media narrative for Black people to Africans, either in the continent or in the diaspora when they come here, right? And the diaspora, particularly the ones who came here, not those of us who were brought here, I'm talking about in particular. That we are lazy, that we need to pull ourselves up our bootstraps because we don't take advantage of all our opportunities here, that we're violent, that we are full of criminals, that we complain, right? And that we're down with the imperialist project. That's the media narrative that's fed to you both on the continent and as newcomer Africans here in the United States to keep us apart. So we have to watch the media because, as stated at the beginning of my talk, the United States is an enemy, has been an enemy, and will be an enemy of African people both on the continent and here at home. Thank you so much.